One night, my friend and I were driving through eastern Texas late at night. We were on our way to Austin from Oklahoma. It's a pretty long drive, 700 miles each way. Along the route, we saw what looked like a large man walking along the highway. He appeared to be carrying something in his right hand, so we thought he might have been walking back from maybe a party or something. But as we got closer, we could tell it wasn't a human, but some sort of person in a reptile suit. But they were about 7 feet tall. And the closer we got, and the more our headlights illuminated him or it, something just seemed so off. First off, this was a long stretch of road, with nothing out here. Why would somebody be walking around out here in the middle of the night in a lizard costume? But the closer we got, we could begin to see that the suit or costume this man was supposedly wearing looked very realistic. So I figured I would blow the horn, maybe get his attention. And as soon as I did, I regretted it. I say it because I don't know if it has a gender or what it was, but it turned to face us. That's when I realized this was not somebody in a costume. This was some failed science experiment or something. And I could tell that whatever was in its hand was part of a dead animal. I couldn't tell what. I want to say maybe a dead fox. This was real and definitely not a human. I am one of those people who believe in these things, but I'm writing this testimony because for some reason, something inside me told me to do so. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back there again. And ever since that experience of August 1st, 2014, I can close my eyes and still see the look on his face, at us running away and him holding something, which looked like a large animal. Now, before I even got up to him, we were doing about 80 miles an hour, and when we saw him and the headlights off in the distance, we began to slow down. Now, when he turned his face around and looked at us, his eyes were beet red. They looked like they had been lit up by fire, although it's impossible. There were no lights around. He looked like he wasn't supposed to exist or be real, like he looked like he walked off a movie set. If I can be real with you, it reminded me of a creature you'd see in one of those 2000 sci-fi movies on the Sci-Fi Channel. Not animatronic, but not in a costume either. Just very realistic. Anyway, on another occasion, my friend and I were sitting around at night, having some drinks and talking about how glad we were to not be driving through the country during this time. Who knows what might be out there lurking, waiting for us. Pretty soon, our conversation turned to more serious matters, like Bigfoot, UFOs, and paranormal, both of which we're all very interested in. All of a sudden, we heard some very loud footsteps, as if somebody was running outside. We both got up, turned off the lights to see if we could see anything, although we couldn't. I feel like from now on, I'll try and be more aware of what's happening. Not just at night, but thinking about all these things that go down during the day. Sometimes I wonder if they are coming closer to civilization. Or is it me? Or am I the only one who feels this way? One thing is for sure. I'll really try and never let my guard go down again. Because while driving down some empty backcountry road late at night, you'll wake up sometimes with goosebumps, thinking about what might be out there. I know I'll never forget that encounter. I live about 40 minutes away from Syracuse. I had a sighting with this black snake-like creature that was upright like a man, 6 foot tall, and I saw it running into the woods when I made eye contact with it. About 2 years prior to this sighting, I saw some red eyes at night, off of Buckley Road. Now, these eyes were pretty high up from the ground, and very close together. At the time, I thought it was just eye shine, but after this encounter, I'm thinking it was more than that. Not that it was an eye shine, but more so what it came from. Definitely not a deer, like I may have thought it to be then. I'm sorry there's not a lot to my story, but The being in which I saw was very, very strange. To be honest, I've never shared this story with anybody before. But after listening to all your stories on how other people have seen these similar reptilian creatures, I don't really know if I'm scared anymore. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in having these strange sightings, and I'm glad to know that when you see them, it doesn't always mean you're going to get hurt. Somehow this makes me feel safer. I guess thank you for any helpful information you might have. I used to be a resident of Texas, actually, and although I'm currently in Colorado, I still have family down there. But that's not the part that concerns me, so let's go over with what does. My sister was studying at the university in Texas, and she started telling me about strange things going on at where she has lived. She's told me stories about finding large clawed footprints out in her yard and pastures, seeing strange lights at night through her windows. Especially since she kind of lives out in the country. There's no streetlights or nothing, and the weird lights kind of come and go. She's not a believer in the paranormal or UFOs, so she's pretty unconvinced, but does find the sightings and lights very strange. I've dismissed these claims as nothing more than paranoia at the time, or maybe an overactive imagination, until one time, visiting my parents, who are actually in Cedar Hill. This was in 2014, by the way. I had heard noises outside that sounded somewhat like growls at first, but as the night went on, I realized they were far too deep to be anything other than something maybe like a bear. The prints were the same prints my sister had been seeing. They looked wrong. I remember my father grabbing his flashlight, heading out to see what was making these noises, while my mother and I stayed put inside. I heard him go out there, and kind of mumbling to himself for a minute. Then it went quiet. Then he runs back in, and he describes to us seeing a creature around 5'10", covered from head to toe in dark black to green scales, looking almost like the reflection of moonlight. It had a very large muscular build, 3 sharp claws in each hand, and a mouth full of fangs. My dad was so pale. The thing apparently snarled at him and retreated back into the tree line. My dad described it like he caught it doing something, and it seemed startled. So who knows what that's all about. But I've never seen him so scared out of his mind before in my life. He told me he has no idea what that thing was, and only remembers it making a horrible, high-pitched scream before disappearing. We came to find out the next day that this creature had been seen on their property in recent days by their neighbors. My parents didn't have a camera system, so we had no way to make that proof. Of course, we didn't find out about the whole neighbor seeing this thing until later. My dad still does not know what it was, or why it would just up and visit his house like that, out of nowhere. I tried to research and look up reptiles native to Texas, which are obviously quite a few, and nothing really fit, except large lizards, such as the monitor lizards, which aren't supposed to be here anyway. So at least there's that much. But that doesn't even begin to describe what this being looked like. The interesting bit is my father described the strange lizard man creature as having a very human face, as he described it. He also made note that it looked highly intelligent. It gets more strange than that. My sister came across the story of a girl who saw some kind of creature near her home. This was also in Texas, back in 2013. She found the story on Facebook, printing out the story to show my father, so he'd know that she wasn't just making up her own stories or anything. Of course, her showing him that was before his own sighting, because he didn't believe it at the time. He brought this article over to me, and I got back home. I wasn't sure what to make of it at the time. My grandmother, who's also from Dallas, but has since moved away now, she told us that she used to see unexplained lights all the time outside of her house, and she lives in Garland. I don't know much about these reptilian entities, but if they really are real, I'd like to know why there's so much activity around Dallas. My grandmother explained to me that she used to see lights outside of her house all the time late at night. And sometimes, when she'd look out the window, there would be this large creature standing there in the street, peering in at her, as if it wanted to come in, but wouldn't. At first, this obviously terrified her, until one day she realized that whatever this thing is, it, I guess, wasn't harmful. It just stood there, glowing yellow eyes, with some sort of horrific expression, like it just wanted to scare my grandmother. She got after it. She would cuss at it, open the door and yell it, tell it to go away. It never would. It would just stand there and watch her. One time, she even called my grandfather, who was at work, and he said there was nothing out there with her. Of course, she would keep looking out the window again to see if it had gone away, but no. It would still just stand in the street, like its feet were rooted to the ground while she watched it. And this went on for years, until she finally moved away out of that house. We have no idea what that's all about. Now, when I told my grandmother about what had happened to my sister and us the one night, she got really quiet, asked me not to tell anybody else. People might think we're crazy. After all, we got some of those looks after telling a few friends what had happened. And just last week, I saw more news stories pop up on these lizard men seen outside of Dallas. I did another search online, where they described them as having green skin, bulging eyes and whatnot. My sister, upon doing some more research, even saw a YouTube video where some guy apparently got footage of these things, but I don't know about that. Supposedly happened in California. If lizardmen are real, what is happening? Is it just because of the increase in population around Dallas, or is there more something sinister happening? By the way, my father has never shown interest in cryptozoology or the paranormal, but I know he's now terrified. He believes something is stalking his house specifically. I think my sister is starting to open up. He told me he wanted to move away, ASAP. He hasn't slept right since that night, which was a while ago now, and he won't be sleeping any better now that he knows more about these things. As for me, I'm still not 100% sure what I believe, but I try to be open-minded and understand there is something going on, something more than what I can comprehend or understand.